Hi, this is Roy Worley. Welcome to the interview show that brings on guests from all walks of life. Yeah, it's here that they tell their stories and delve a little deeper into their lives to see what got them where they are. So grab a drink, have a seat, and relax, because this is the Leo Effect.
When was the last time a short movie shook your emotions to the core? When was the last time a short movie caused you to rethink everything you stood for? When was the last time a short movie made you proud to be an American? When was the last time you felt the emotion to stand up and cheer after a short movie? The new short movie, I've Got Your Six, written and directed by Bill Foster, one of the industry's newest and fastest climbing directors, will answer all of those questions. Rarely has there been so much packed into a short movie that when you leave, you'll feel more proud of our American military veterans. A movie that was cast only with American military veterans will have you on the edge of your seat, cheering for our veterans and what makes America great. I've Got Your Six will be hitting the film festival scene soon. Be prepared to drop what you're doing and go see this powerful movie when it comes to your area. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Leo Effects. Now, today I'm joined by an awesomely super guest. I'm very, very excited to speak to her. I've checked out some of her work on the internet, and it's just unbelievable. It's fantastic. So please allow me to introduce my guest for this evening, Sue Wong. How are you?
I'm really, really well, Ray, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that you're here. We got quite a few things to talk about, and you know, a lot of people, like a lot of listeners, might not know exactly who you are or what you do. So why don't we start there? We've established you're Sue Wong, but what is it that you do?
Okay, well, I'm an all-around creative intuitive, but I would say, for the last few decades, I'm really very most well known as a glamorous fashion designer of old Hollywood sort of glamorous style from the 1920s and 1930s, and my gowns have really beautiful romantic sensibilities. And I think I was the first American designer credited with bringing haute couture looks to women in America and actually all over the world, because I did sell to 27 different countries as well. But I've brought them in at pret-a-porter prices. So my gowns look like they, should have been like, anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000, $12,000 a piece, but in fact they were just a mere few $100s a piece, maybe 500 to under 1,000 actually, and so I was able to really sell to the best retailers across the country, including Neiman Marcus and Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom's and Saks Fifth Avenue. I mean, I sold to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been, most famous as. But, I'm an all-around creative intuitive, and I call myself a creative intuitive because I'm very well versed, not only in fashion design, but all different other kinds of modality and other genres. I like to, cross over to so many different things, I think if I hadn't been a fashion designer in life, maybe as a profession, I would have probably chosen interior design. But originally, I really wanted, I had aspirations to be an artist or a painter. But coming from a very traditional background, my parents wouldn't support my education in art. So I kind of went into fashion as a sideline. And I did very well for myself. I became very, very successful. And, I loved what I do. It was a great career. But I basically sort of semi-retired from fashion about 3 years ago. And I just really needed to take time off because I've been, running ragged and, running my own business for decades and, very, very crazy, frenetic pace. That's what fashion is, because I don't know whether, your listeners know this, but in the American fashion market, there are 5 seasons a year. The Europeans only have 2 seasons a year, or maybe three now, but we have 5 seasons a year. So basically, every 2 to 2.5 months, we had to really reinvent ourselves all over again and put out a different collection. So I think in all of my years, my decades in fashion, I think I only set out 2 seasons in my entire life. So that was a lot of work. And so I just decided to take several years off, which I have. And now I'm going to really be coming back with a lot of really exciting things that I can tell you about later on.
Absolutely.
Great.
What was it that inspired you to become a fashion designer in the first place? You said it was a sideline thing.
Well, I think as a girl, I was always sort of like a girly girl. I've always loved really pretty clothes. And maybe one of the impetus was, when I first immigrated to this country. I guess I should really tell the listeners a little bit about my personal history too. I grew up in Maoist China, in a time of tumult and revolution. And, there was famine and scarcity all over the place. And, I don't even know how I survived, but miraculously I survived. I think probably because my, dear grandmother used to really chase rats around the house just so that I would have some dinner. And that's basically how I survived, Or my mother would trap field mice in the fields and bring them back home for dinner. But anyway, so I grew up under a lot of, hardship and scarcity. And when I came to America, I expected all the streets to be paved with gold, just because the Chinese name for America was Gold Mountain, probably left over from the gold mining days. And by the way, my family lineage has a long history with this country because my great-great-grandfather came over, in the 1800s to help build the railroads near Sacramento. So, the Chinese really had a great part in the building of this, country by connecting the East Coast to the West Coast with, the railroads, which were basically built by the Irish and the Chinese. And if you were to probably excavate, along those railroad lines, you would probably find the bones of many Chinese men who basically worked really hard to really help build this country. So, I'm from the Taishan region in Guangdong, China, which is really the southernmost province in China. And the capital of Guangdong was, the old name was Canton, and now it's called Guangzhou. So, Taishan, the Taishan region was the first to send, her sons and daughters out towards the world. So my people were the first, Chinese settlers here in America. So, all the old Chinese that, were from the old days all came from my region.
That is an amazing heritage.
Yes, thank you. I feel very proud of it because, America is really made and was created, on the sweat and bloods of dedicated immigrants, and they were incredibly courageous. I mean, just really think about the immigrants from all over the world that really came to this country seeking a better future. But they really, made it, all the way from the East Coast, via wagon trains, and they settled here in the West. I mean, it's an incredible story, the building and the settling of America. But certainly the Chinese really had their part in history here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you've gone from poverty to prosperity, and it's such an inspiring story.
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I think I really have gone from rags to riches, back to rags, and now back to riches again. So it's a sort of I'm the classic I would say the classic American success story. And because I believed in the American dream, I came from less than nothing, as I just revealed to you. But I, made the most of my life because I believe in living one's quantum potential. Because I really feel that life is such a precious and such a beautiful gift. And, a lot of people, don't realize this, and they're not in gratitude of the opportunities, that life has. So they really, kind of become asleep on the job, so to speak. So they don't realize their full potential. They don't really manifest their dreams and, into reality. But I think I have for the most part because, I had tenacity and I, stuck with my vision and I stuck with my dream. And that's what you really have to do in life.
Yeah, absolutely. You're no stranger to obstacles, and it sounds like you've really faced many challenges. Like, what would you say was probably one of the harder obstacles in being a fashion designer?
Well, I mean, actually, my career was always, my bright side. Um, I think, when I started out being a fashion designer, I didn't tell myself I wanted to be the wealthiest fashion designer or the most successful. I said to myself, I want to be the best fashion designer. I want to really put my foot forward and do the best that I can because I think that's really who I am because I've always been committed to excellence, because the world is mediocre enough and it doesn't need any more mediocrity. It needs people who are really committed, to excellence. So I think that's what really kind of separated me from, perhaps others. And then also, I always like to be really at the front line or the, avant-garde, of, to just be the first to do something. So, and what I do, whatever it is that I do, rather, I always put my stamp of, my mantra is beauty, magic, and transformation. So I have a very unique, touch to my work, and it's instantaneously recognizable in fashion. If I had a display at Neiman Marcus, basically from across the room, 150 feet away, you could really spot my stuff on the mannequin and they would say, oh, that's a Sue Wong. So it's always informed by glamour, beauty, magic, all of that. And in my work, I try to really, celebrate women and the goddess energy that resides in them. And so I call it basically the feminine divine, which is really, I created these visions of beauty which honored women and it made them really feel good. It was designed to really, my clothes were designed to really, make a woman feel like a goddess. So, I always, aspire to do that in my work.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that. Like by looking at your work, absolutely see the inspiration and the beauty behind it. And when you see the models wearing your stuff, they look so empowered.
Yes, I mean, my clothes really do enchant and they also empower and they, make a woman feel beautiful because of this empowerment. So, I sort of digressed from your original question. So I'll go back to that. I think in my personal life, I really have suffered a lot of adversities and losses. So, let me just really tell you the trajectory of my life a little bit. So I basically, went to, a design school. It was actually just a trade school. And I won first place in this design scholarship. Within a month, I had a job. And so, So I trained under the head designer, and then later on, I just really wanted my own freedom, and I opened my own one of a kind shop in Venice Beach when it was very bohemian, and I was a rebel anyway. So I had one of a kind creations, and they were hung from the ceiling, to really sort of create this three-dimensional effect of basically an art installation. And so right from the beginning, I had movie stars like Susan Strasberg and Goldie Hawn, and one day Bianca Jagger, who was just really newlywed to Mick, walked in, and she basically cleaned me out of practically everything. So that was really a great thing. So then eventually I went back after two stints. I went back to the company that I started out with. But then by this time, I was really the designer of this division they had called Young Edwardian by Arpegia, which was really the premier label back in those days. It was probably they're out of business now, but they were a giant. They were sort of like the BCBG of their time. And basically, they were doing, I think, about a $3 million business when I came. And by the time, within 3 years, I had taken them to, $52 million. And this was decades ago. So that's probably that $52 million would really translate to over $500 million today. So anyway, I was very, very successful at a very young age. I think by the time I was 25, I really had accomplished the American dream. I had four homes, two in Malibu side by side, mansions, and then I had an oceanfront property in Hawaii. Then I had my original house in the Hollywood Hills that I bought when I was 22 years old. So, life was really great. I was making millions of dollars, jet setting on the Concorde, between New York and London and Paris and all of that. And so I was really living this glam life, except, I sort of married the wrong man. Even though I was really in love with him, he, had a mental illness. So I basically had to leave. And that was a devastating divorce. And in the middle of the divorce, I decided to start my own first business, And by then I had probably about 10 years in fashion. And I didn't know what I was doing financially or the structuring of the business. And unfortunately, con artists got a hold of me. And within 1 year, all of my money disappeared. And I was bankrupt with two little babies, really. They were only about, maybe a year and a half and 2.5. And I had to start all over again in life. And so that was really difficult. And during this whole period, I lost my first brother because my parents had two brothers when they were reunited here in America. And so I went back to work, to my credit, and within about a year and a half, I was able to buy myself a brand new 4-bedroom, 4-bath house, for my kids, put them into private school. And, that's the power of, being good at what you do, because then you become in demand. And so I was able to find myself a good job. And, about probably maybe 3.5, 4 years passed. And, then I met my partner for about 24 years. And then I decided to risk everything and, go at it again and put everything I had on the line. And I started my second business. And so, that was really in, I think, the mid 80s, maybe 1986 or so. And that's the business that I had for, about 32 years. And, before I decided I really had enough. So anyway, so it was not easy, but I made it again. after a long climb. Basically, I was in the wrong category, but, there was, I think in 1999, I had produced some garments. I didn't produce the garments, I produced the samples. And, the guy that I produced them with was, very dishonest. And so, I said to my partner, I have to really take these garments and, get a manufacturer, so my ex-partner lined up three, factories for me to see in Hong Kong. And lo and behold, of all the factories in China, and I'm talking about thousands upon thousands of factories, fashion factories in China, the very first factory I walked into, I saw all of my samples, in their showroom. And, so what are the chances of that, Now, isn't there magic in the universe? I found, the factory, I walked right into the factory who had made those samples for me through this Korean agent. So I hit the jackpot, and I had a stack of orders for him. And then I said to myself, well, it's July of 1999, and in 5 months, every woman on this planet is going to really want to really bring in the millennium with a cocktail dress or a beautiful long evening gown. So on the spot, I met 3 factories, including the first one, and I designed about 25 garments on the spot, put them into work with the stipulation that they had to give me, my first samples and the counter samples within 1 month. So I marketed, the samples after they came in, and of course they just looked drop dead gorgeous. I marketed, them in time to really ship 2 months before the millennium. And guess what? They just really flew off the floors like hotcakes. And instantaneously, I had a new business. A new business was born. So the last, 20 years of my career basically was, devoted to, evening wear, which I had never designed before, but I basically taught myself how to design evening wear in 1 season. And I became a runaway success. And, they would really line up in my booth at the Coterie or all these trade shows about, 4 or 5, people deep just to get into my booth. So I became this overnight sensation. And I basically commandeered that market. And I was really the #1 resource in evening wear, for over a decade, and, made a fortune. That's why I could really, afford to really retire after a 5-decade career. And so that's where, it is for me right now.
You are so resilient, and it's such an inspiration. And now
Thank
that
you.
you're retired, like, what are you doing now?
Well, I mean, I'm not exactly retired, at all. There's just so much to do. I'm still called, to do fashion shows. I'm still really given. I mean, even though it's really funny, but I've been retired for 3 years, and just in October, I think it was, or was it September, for LA Fashion Week. Even though I was retired, they gave me the Designer of the Year award.
Wow. Okay.
So go figure. But I also recently had my Oscar party. So I produced a huge fashion show for that. And then also, Arts Hearts Fashion, which I used to show with every, major season. 2 times a year. They really gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award, and so they honored me with this huge retrospective show. So I've been very active still, but let me tell you what my plans are. I'm trying to really reach my Facebook page so I can, sort of do a little excerpt from it for you. But yeah, just because I'm sort of semi-retired from fashion, and I wouldn't say it's a 100%, retirement because, I'm still, like pursuing licensing possibilities, but I'm really going into home and hotels. Actually, Freya Pruitt, who is sitting next to me, she is going to help me establish the Sue Wong Legacy Foundation. And basically, what that is, because now I'm getting older and I really want to think about, what kind of imprint I want to leave behind, as a contribution, because I met this, master, he was a Taoist master once. He sort of like just appeared at my doorsteps very mystically in Kipahulu, my home in Hawaii. And so, he said that there are four great purposes in life. So, the first one is basically paying the karmic debt, because you have two columns, you have a column of credit and you have a column of debit. So whatever good you do in the world, it goes towards your credit column. Whatever bad stuff you do in the world, it goes to your debit column. So, we're here to really, right all wrongs, sort of like balance out the sheet, so to speak. So paying the karmic debt. And then the next one is, contribution, how are you going to really leave this earth a better place, when you're not here. So now that I'm really getting older, I'm thinking about that, So the other one I think was learning, because you can never learn, enough about yourself, so anyway, getting back to contribution, I basically, I'm wondering, was wondering how I can really leave the world a better place. And, basically what I have decided to do is I own this very, very beautiful historical home. I don't know whether you read about it or not.
Yeah, the
but
Cedar.
The Cedars, yes. The Cedars, I live in a museum. I don't live in an ordinary house. It's just really this incredible, place that's just really astonishing, and it was built, by a visionary artist, by the name of Maurice Tounier. And he came to America, I think, to Hollywood in the teens from Paris. And so he worked, with the MGM boys, Louis B. Mayer and Samuel Goldwyn as a screenwriter. And also as a director. As a matter of fact, the silent version of The Last of the Mohicans was his movie, along with, I think, The Ice House. It was based on Henrik Ibsen's, play. Anyway, he was a trained academic artist. And so he basically created this incredible palazzo. And there is really no, house like this anywhere, because it's really a visionary work of art. And so we, over the years, so many illustrious people have lived here. And I was told it's because, the hill that this house sits on is a magical vortex. And so, it's also a power point. And that's why so many visionary artists have always been attracted to this house. So the Cedars basically served host for a constellation of legendary stars and musical royalty, including Norma Talmadge, who was really the first lady of cinema during the silent era. And she lived here with her husband, Joe Schenck, who happened to have been the, founder of 20th Century Fox Studios. And they would entertain their best friends who lived nearby, Charlie Chaplin, Sir Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. Well, they lived in Beverly Hills, so they had their mansion called Pickford.
Right.
But they would entertain them here at the Cedars, and later on, they would really go on to form their own studios, which was called United Artists Studios. I'm sure you've heard of UA, right?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So after Norma Talmadge, then the horror star Bela Lugosi lived here, during his Count Dracula days in the 30s. Actually, before him, Howard Hughes lived here. And then after Howard Hughes was Errol Flynn. And then after Errol Flynn, was Bela Lugosi. And because Bela Lugosi lived here, decades later, Johnny Depp lived here because, he was trying to vibe in on Bela Lugosi for his role as Ed Wood in Tim Burton's movie Ed Wood. And Marilyn Monroe used to party here a lot. Then in the 60s, it became this iconic rock palace. So you had the likes of Jimi Hendrix and Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. And if you remember, the Velvet Underground was Andy Warhol's, a band. So Andy Warhol would stay here whenever he was on the West Coast. And then you had Bob Dylan staying here. You had Jim Morrison here. You had the Rolling Stones and Brian Jones living here. You had John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas living here. And did I mention Jim Morrison, too, of the Doors, right? Mm-hmm. And then, I think in 1968, there was a classic made called Easy Rider, with Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. So they filmed all the New Orleans scenes, they filmed here, right, in my foyer, in my library, and in the Grand Salon, which is really this huge ballroom. So, it's a very, very famous house. So basically, what I'm going to be doing is, a very interesting thing. So I'm going to really start my own, philanthropic legacy foundation. And it's going to include the Cedars. I will bequeath it, to the foundation, probably before, my demise. And then it will become a living museum of Hollywood history. And in addition to that, I have archived, the last 20 years of my work, all my favorite pieces, which includes about 11,000, pieces of my favorite designs. So I also want to start the Sue Wong Fashion Museum. And,
cool.
and it will also feature residency programs for future, budding fashion designers from all over the world. And it will also include my vast library of original sketches, as well as my motifs, of the last 20 years. And, so I think this is going to be a really great thing. And so those are the two things, but there's a lot more coming. So let's see. So I will also be writing 4 books, including my own autobiography, and I'm going to create a table coffee book on the Cedars. And the last chapter, I think, to really bring it home to full circle, I would really do a chapter on photographing current rock stars, with my beautiful models, with their, in full regalia, with their spectacular headdresses and everything, within, different environments of the Cedars, which I think would really connect the rock legacy of this house, to basically the fashion element, which I, have brought to it, and the glamour. And then I'm going to do a coffee table book of all of my iconic looks of the last 20 years. And then the last book is really going to be a book on my wisdom writings. I don't know whether you've seen my Facebook, but people love what I share, which is really wisdom mixed with visuality. So there's going to be a book of that. And then I'm going to be working on my biopic, which is called Red Lotus. And the script is really currently being polished and fine tuned right now. And the story of Red Lotus basically will chronicle my sort of, bigger than life story and my life journey, basically, growing up in post revolutionary Maoist China. And it will also, in part be about my sort of wild, hippie, halcyon, bohemian days, because I was very much counterculture, as a countercultural bohemian living in Venice Beach, where I, had my boutique. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's going to be a very touching story. To serve as an inspiration for many people, because I want people to really know and have some belief in themselves, that I want my own life to be an example that, okay, I believed in my dreams and I was able to really bring them to manifest reality. So if I can do it, you can do it also, because the Sue Wong life story is, ultimately one about hope, and I think hope to really accomplish one's dreams are very important, even with the themes of power and greed and betrayal and, money and glamour and all that, sort of Shakespearean stuff, I think, I survived it all. Not I think, I know I did, because I wouldn't be without it. So anyway, it's really been a life of really great challenges, but the whole thing is, you don't really give in to, life adversities. You figure out a way to really thrive, and grow in spite of it and not become, a victim in life. So, that's basically what I want to share with, my, fans and followers out there.
Yeah. And with the creative energy that just flows from you and your home, I have no doubts that all of these things are going to be absolutely amazing. And I can't wait for the books to come out. I'm definitely going to get my hands on those.
Well, thank you. Well, the other exciting thing is that I'm going really straight into, architecture and Sue Wong designer signature homes, because, like I said, I love beautiful homes as much as I really love beautiful fashion and glamour and all of that. And whatever I do is going to be informed with glamour anyway. So I just bought this really, beautiful estate, probably, just 5 minutes away from the Cedars, and I'm going to really, transform it, into this really grand palazzo. So I can hardly wait to get started. And then eventually, somebody is really talking to me about, a line of, beautiful Sue Wong boutique hotels. So I'm doing that as well. So there's a lot on my plate.
Yeah. Well, if the homes and hotels are anything like your designs, they're going to be absolutely beautiful.
Well, you've seen photos of my homes, I'm sure. The Cedars is very magical. It's very old, glamorous Hollywood and European at the same time. And then my house in Malibu is completely contemporary and modernistic, because I've been an avid art collector for 35 years or more. So that's also a different type of museum, is a museum of modern art. And then I have a spiritual sanctuary in the, rainforest of East Maui. And they're all very, very different, but they're all beautiful, and they're different aspects of who I am.
That's so wild.
Yes.
Well, Sue, as we're winding down here, I just want to establish for the listeners that your website, SueWong.com, they can get to all your social medias that way, right?
Well, yes, I think it's listed, but on Facebook and Instagram, I'm listed as Sue Wong Fashion.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to
Yes.
put links in the description of the podcast, so the listeners just got to click and off they go. It'll make it nice and easy for everybody.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show, and it was a great honor.
No, the honor was all mine. You're an amazing guest, and I really had a fun and interesting time listening to your story. Like
Oh, thank you.
it's amazing. I can't wait for your biography, your autobiography. That's going to be great.
Well, it's going to be very interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I've lived a vibrant life with very few regrets. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you to all
Thank
the
you.
listeners who tuned in to check this out. Make sure you click on the next episode and keep this train a going. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for fans like you, so thank you all very, very much, and we'll see you all next time. Oh, now that was an awesome interview. Thanks so much for listening. You all are so great. And don't forget to head to Facebook, Insta, and Twitter and follow The Leo Effects. If you want to hear some comedy and ridiculous voices, check out Shattered Dungeons on YouTube and all other places podcasts can be heard. And you'll hear me voicing crazy characters, usually pretty terribly. So thank you so much. You all are the absolute best. And we will see you all on the next episode.